Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, my name's Terry and I'm an alcoholic. Because of the power program of Alcoholics Anonymous, a woman like me has not had to take a drink since January 28, 1987. Thank you. I love the countdown. Cliff with 61 years and Crystal begging for a day. Isn't that Alcoholics Anonymous? And I am so grateful to be here. I really want to thank Sandy and Laura and the entire committee for inviting me. It is my pleasure to be here. But more than that, it is my privilege to be here. It is my honor and privilege to do anything I am asked to do in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have this fabulous life I could have never dreamed of. I owe, and I will go anywhere and do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous. I will do whatever you ask me. I hope I never get so sober that I feel like I don't need to do service work or do what you ask me to do, that the sense of entitlement that is part of my disease demands that you treat me any different than any other member in Alcoholics Anonymous. I love this program. I love this program. I come from an upper middle class family. You know, my mom was a nurse and my dad was in the service, and my first resentment, I was about a year and a half old. I didn't remember it. My mom told me like I needed another one to add to the list, right? And it was when my sister was born and they kicked me out of the crib and put me in the bed. And my dad would put me to bed and he'd walk out to the living room and I'd be right behind him. And he'd paddle my butt and put me in bed and turn around and go into the living room and I'd be right behind him. And he would paddle my butt, put me to bed, go to the living room, and I'd be right behind him. From that moment on, they could never love me enough or punish me enough to get me to do what they wanted me to do. I have had the attitude of no, and you can't make me since I was born. And it didn't matter if you were my parents or teachers or the police, it did not matter. No, and you can't make me. And my family, we traveled around a little because my dad was in the Navy, and we finally settled down in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and it looked totally normal. We lived in a court where everybody's mom was a nurse and everybody's dad was in the military, and we played games like Red Rover, and Mother May I, and I had no idea that alcoholism lived in my home. You know, my dad was on submarines and aircraft carriers. He was gone for long periods of times, and when he came home, he'd had armloads of toys or puppies, and I thought he was Santa Claus. I had no idea that my father was a chronic alcoholic. And when my dad took us out into the garage to tell him he was divorcing my mother, I heard him say, "I don't love you anymore, and I'm leaving." And we were a family that went to church every Sunday, and I learned in church what I learned later in Alcoholics Anonymous, that God answers unselfish prayers. And as a little girl, after that my dad told me that he was leaving, I cried myself to sleep every night praying to God to keep my family together, because to me that seemed like an unselfish prayer. And when we got in the car, loaded it up, and headed for Montana from Virginia Beach, I made the conscious decision at that moment that the God idea was a big, fat lie. There's no God out there answering unselfish prayers or that cares or loves me. You can't trust God. And you can't trust your mom and dad either. And I got to Billings, Montana, one angry little girl. And it did not take me long to find other little angry girls and boys just like me. I was a juvenile delinquent of the worst kind almost instantly. I remember the first time that I drank alcohol that I had the effect. I don't know if it was the first time I drank, but I remember the effect. And we were swimming in the big ditch because you're not allowed to, and I like doing what I'm not allowed to do. So we're all swimming in the big ditch, and actually later, like 20 years later, I saw a big bloated dead cow in the big ditch, and I'm thinking that's why we weren't supposed to be in it. Anyways, at the time, it was defiance, and we crawled out of the ditch and onto the bank, and we're laying in the sun, and somebody pulled out a bottle of Strawberry Hill, Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. Who can't relate to that? Or Mad Dog 2020, huh? So anyways, we're drinking, they pass it to me, and I just take a big old guzzle, and I mean, it's magic. I felt it run entirely through my body. I didn't know that I felt so bad till I took that drink and felt so good. And that drink changed my life. It also changed my mother's life, my father's life, and my brother's life, and my sister's life, and anybody that was going to come in contact with me for the next 14 years. Because all that mattered to me from that moment on was feeling like that. And I wasn't a very good student in school, and it got way worse. And I'm not somebody who ever drank without consequence. From almost that moment on, I was in and out of jail. By the time I was 14, I was made a ward of the state, remanded to the custody of my mother, which meant that whenever I got out of hand, she could call the police and they'd just take me to jail. By the time I was 15, I was sent to reform school, and back in the 70s, the reform school was not the fun place to be, especially in Billings. I was the only white girl there, and I was harassed and pushed around and beat on, and in the meantime, my dad had moved to Montana and remarried my mother. No big deal for us. We do that all the time, right? So they'd been remarried, which caused a lot of problems in the family, especially for me. There was no way he was going to show up 3 years later and try and be my dad, you know, and we would get in fights, and one time he beat me up, and my mother told me, "You have every right to call the police, but I want you to know your dad's an alcoholic. He's a sick man." And I remember telling him, "He's not sick. He's a drunk. There's nothing wrong with him. He just needs to quit drinking." And I did not call the police. You know, I just got madder and meaner. And while I was in reform school, my dad called me up, and he said, "I'm divorcing your mother." And what I heard was, "It's your fault." And I got out of reform school. Well, something happened at reform school. You know, I never learned the right lessons from things. Like, my dad, when we were kids, he would, we'd hang on his bicep and he'd lift us up. You know, he'd tell us to punch him in the stomach as hard as we could, and we would, and he'd say, "See, you can't hurt steel." And believe me, that became a very useful tool later on in my drinking, you know, because I just became steel. And so he called me and said he was divorcing my mom, and I heard it was my fault, and I was angry. I mean, I was angry. And the next morning when we got in line and went down to the mess hall, this great big woman turned around and said something to me. I don't even remember what it was, but I let her have every ounce of anger I had in my body. And I'm telling you, I did not win that fight, but everybody there respected me for taking her on. That's the lesson I learned. People respect you when you do stuff like that. And when I got out of reform school, nothing changed except for I fought more. I drank more. I did more. And in and out of jail, I ran away all the time. I can't even count how many times I ran away. And it's not because I didn't have a good life where I was. I had everything I needed at home. It had nothing to do with that. I was a free spirit. You know, I'd just be going along, and all of a sudden I needed to get on the highway and put out my thumb, or, you know, not go home when I was supposed to. And since I'm in trouble already, I might as well take a vacation for a couple weeks. But once I remember feeling really bad, because I knew my mom worried and I knew it hurt her. So one time when I ran away, I left her a note and told her I'm okay, just leaving for a while. And I would call her when I got where I was going, and I never called her. You know, I just couldn't follow through that far. And she said, that's the time I knew you were dead, when you left me a note and said you would call, and you didn't. But I was not, and I showed back up like I always do. And I was going to school. The only reason I graduated from high school is because in reform school there was nothing else to do but schoolwork. And I got all caught up and went back to school. And then my senior year I got pregnant. And back in those days you weren't going to school pregnant. You know, they sent you off to homes for unwed children, or unwed children, that's for sure. Unwell, definitely was that. Unwed girls, and they hid you away. And so that was my senior year, and I finished school in night school and demanded that they transfer me back to high school so I could graduate with my class, because I had worked so hard. That's the kind of ego I have. You know, I sponsor women who have such low self-esteem they wouldn't take a job as a speed bump. And I'm like I have the kind of ego where you're lucky if I let you breathe my air. You know, so they transfer me back to my school so I can walk down the aisle and get my diploma, and I ended up giving that baby up for adoption. And I look back and I think that is the only unselfish thing that I did before I got to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I imagine what that baby would have walked through the next 7 years. And just right out of high school, having just had that baby, I met the man who was to become my husband. The problem at the moment was that he was my girlfriend's boyfriend and somebody else's husband, but so it just takes a little longer to get what you want, you know what I mean? Believe me, I should have let them have him, as it turns out. So we drank the same. We drank the same, and it turned into really a very violent marriage. And I would like to say that he was the abuser, but I tell you, if he did not start it, I would. And he was a foot taller than me and 100 pounds heavier, and I didn't care. I was in his face and poking his chest, and he practically had no defense except for to knock me down, to tell you the truth. And it became really violent, and like one of our other speakers shared, pretty soon people didn't want to be around us, and it was unpredictable what was going to be happening with Terry and Ray if you were drinking with them. And one night in particular, I was going out, and I asked him if he wanted to go, because I'm nice. And he didn't, so I went anyways, and it was like any typical night: go out to the bar, go to the party after the bar, and get home about 5 or 6 in the morning in time to get ready for work. And when I got there, he wasn't there, and I remember thinking, how dare him go out without me, you know. And I kind of passed out in my car because I didn't have a key to the house, and when I woke up he still wasn't there, and I crawled in the window, and there was a note on the table that said he had left me. And I remember thinking, he left me. He's the sick one. He's the abusive one. He left me. And the truth is, thank God he left, because I am not the kind of woman who leaves dangerous situations. I stay, and I stay, and I stay. And I think if he would not have left, one of us or both of us would be dead today. So he left, and and the party's on. I don't have parents, I don't have a husband, and I almost immediately met the next him, you know, and he met me drunk at Grandma's bar, and we had a fabulous time. I fell in love with him. We had a fabulous time for a couple of years, and he drank just like me and partied just like me. And then one day his ex-wife dropped his 2 little girls off on the doorstep and never came back. And he said to me, I can see where you're going and I can't go there. And of course I did not have a choice. And so he left, and really my drinking always cost me a lot, and I didn't care. I'd pay the price. And really it was the first time I ever felt something inside of here. He later told me, I cried and you shrugged your shoulders. But that's what I do. You know, I just start over. I just start over again and again and again. About that time I met my new best friend. It's a little white powder party favor that could keep me drinking for days at a time. And I started like drinking all night and not sleeping at night and going on 3 or 4 day runners and not eating. And I had gotten this job with the post office as emergency temporary help, and it turned into, yeah. I'm who you want to call for emergencies, I'm telling you that. Anyways, I ended up having that job for a couple years, and they hired me on permanent, which became a huge mistake. Twice I got fired from that job and rehired back only because they had missed some union rules and they had to hire me back. And eventually, the second time when they had to hire me back, they shipped me off to this little town outside of Billings where I would spend the rest of my career, which, oddly enough, ends in 32 days. I will be retired from that job. And that doesn't happen for women like me without the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I got fired from that job, and one time I quit the job because I got this great job in the poker room at the Empire Bar. Made great tips. I mean, that's way better than the post office, right? And I called him up and I said, yeah, I won't be in. He goes, we really need you. I said, no, I don't think you understand. I'm never coming back. And he begged me to come back. He was so sorry about that. But so actually, you know, when I got ready to retire last October, I had to pull up my work history and make sure everything was correct, and it made me literally sick to my stomach. Step awarded, step withdrawn, step awarded, step withdrawn, 3-day suspension, 30-day suspension, dismissed, rehired. I mean, 82 to 87 was rough at the post office. So anyways, I end up out in this little town, and in the meantime, I ended up pregnant again. And boy, I don't know what you do with that, but I did the only thing that I could do, the only thing I could possibly do, and I got an abortion, and I never told a single soul, not a single soul. I went to that clinic, I got an abortion, and I went back to the Squire Lounge, and I had a drink, and another one, and I pushed that as far down as I could. And my drinking was getting increasingly dangerous. The people that I was drinking with and the things that were happening with, I was running around with motorcycle clubs, and I went to this rally in South Dakota, and, you know, just having a fabulous time, and you know, I'm dancing, bumping and grinding with 3 or 4 bikers at a time, and you know, I'm just the party girl, and I'm a rowdy party girl. I'm the kind of girl that likes to roll around in the mud and the blood and the beer, and if I'm there, you hear me. So anyways, I'm dancing with all these bikers, and when the dance was over, I wanted the dance to be over, and the dance was not over. The dance was not over until they said. And I got gang raped that night, and I don't know what you do with that. But I put on my clothes and I walk back to the keg and I have a beer, and I don't tell a single soul, and I push that as far down inside of me as I can, and I just keep on drinking. And that's what my drinking started to look like. In the beginning, it was so much fun that You know, I remember in the 7th grade at a party making out with Kevin, and I'm thinking, oh, life will never get better than this. And here I am, you know, 23, 24 years old, and it's painful. You know, I'm still acting like I'm having a great time. Nobody knows the truth about me, not even my best friend. She does not know what's going on in my life. And I'm hanging out in the Squire bar, acting rowdy and wild and fighting, and I am not having any fun. And throughout this time, of course, people have addressed my drinking. You know, I remember even one of my boyfriends, Paul, saying, have you ever considered that you might have a drinking problem? And I'm like, did you come here to have a good time or just screw up mine? That's the last time, might have been the last time I saw him, actually. I don't really remember. But, because, you know, you always have one waiting in case this one leaves. Or you try to leave first, but in case you don't make it, you already have one waiting. And so anyways, it had gotten dark. My drinking had gone from having so much fun to drinking to cover up what was going on with my drinking. And the people had said that I might have a drinking problem and I might want to address my problem, and I always told them, when I'm ready. When I'm ready, I'll stop drinking, I'll pull my act together, and when I'm ready. And I ended up pregnant again. And you know, I hear people talking about how they couldn't even face themselves in the mirror, and I totally relate to that, except for I used to sit up on the sink with my feet in the sink, talking to myself in the mirror, crying, you know, telling myself my story, how bad I had it. And this particular time I remember looking at myself in the mirror and going, okay, Terry, it's time. You gave one away. You killed one. It's time to step up to the plate and be a mom. And I made a decision that it was time to get it together, act like a mom, and quit drinking and doing what I was doing. And I made a decision to quit drinking. And the next day, I woke up not wanting to drink and knowing I had to have a drink. And for the next couple of months, as a pregnant woman, I drank and did cocaine every single day, not wanting to, drinking completely against my will, waking up every morning filled with hate and self-loathing and the shame, and just had to drink more. And I would guzzle vodka at night to pass out so I couldn't think, and I'd do a blast in the morning to get up and go to work, and at night I would guzzle vodka to shut this up so I could go to sleep. I mean, my world had gotten so small. And one particular night, I was about 6 months sober, and I'd been up all night partying with my girlfriend's boyfriend, because still, even 6 months pregnant, that's who I am. And I went to work that day, and oh my gosh, I just remember being so strung out and so tired, and I got home about 4, and I went to bed, and the phone started ringing, and I was a crazy woman jumping up and down on my waterbed, of course, and screaming at the phone, shut up, you know, just insane. And the phone stops ringing, I lay down and go to bed. And at that time I was living with my another sister who was in the same shape as I. Actually, she copied everything I did. I get pregnant, she get pregnant. You know how it is with little sisters. Anyways, so she and I were living together. Really, that's what our life had become in alcoholism. Her and I pregnant, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking and doing dope. And but that particular day, I'd gone to bed about 4, and at 10 o'clock the doorbell rang, and my sister answered it. And we were not picking up the mail, we were not answering the phone, we were not answering the door. And she answered the door, and it was the cops, and they'd been trying to serve me warrants for bad checks. And But she answered the door, and the policeman asked if I were there, and she said yes. And she got me, and I came out, and he said, "Do you know Sandy Kusaw?" And I said, "Yeah, that's my little sister." And he said, "She was shot." And I'm like, "Oh my God, how is she?" And he goes, "No, your sister was murdered this afternoon." And my little sister had been calling me for help. And I was too messed up to answer the phone. And she was brutally beaten and sodomized and shot. And I don't know what you do with that, but I take a drink and another one and another one, and I try and shove that so far down that I can't even feel it, but I could not. There was not enough alcohol or anything else in this world for me to take to be able to get away from that kind of guilt and that kind of shame. I continued to drink until I gave birth to that baby, and that baby was born on September 6th, and September 8th started the murder trial for the man who killed my sister. And I remember they would bring him up in shackles up the back stairs, and I would just stand there and I would try to kill him with my eyes. I just was so full of anger. And when he got 2 life sentences without parole, I thought I'd feel better, but I did not. You know, I felt like my mom and my family and her friends were in so much pain because of me, because I was too messed up to pick up the phone. And I just kept on drinking. That little baby, I remember when I had my baby shower, they said that when they laid that baby in my arms, I would be so overwhelmed with a maternal sense of love for that child that there's nothing like it. And I remember when they laid that baby in my arms, and I felt nothing. And I handed that baby back to the nurse, and I called my boyfriend. I said, "You got to bring me something." And we went to that trial where I sat and I watched all the pictures, and I watched my mom, and while we were there, I went out and I drank every night, and I did things that when I think about them today, I'm still ashamed. You know, still, I could not show up for my mom. I could not be there for any support whatsoever. And so Super Bowl Sunday, 1987, the party's at my house, of course, and I'd passed out on the couch that night, and party started about 11. The doorbell started ringing, and I just started drinking everything I could get my hands on. I'm drinking vodka out of the bottle. I'm snorting cocaine out of a baggie with a tablespoon. I cannot get enough. And at 10 o'clock that night, everybody was gone, and I was stone cold sober and scared to death. And the next morning I woke up and I did not drink and I did not do anything. And what happened for me is I ran out of people and money and really the energy to do what I needed to do to get what I needed. I just could not do it. And I did not drink that day, and I did not drink the next day. And the next day, you know, it's Wednesday. I mean, I have drank every day for years. The only time I didn't take a drink was because I was so sick from my drink and I couldn't take a drink. And it's Wednesday and I'm detoxing. I don't know that. I just think I'm crazy. And I go to bed that night, and I remember another thing my dad taught me. He taught me that if you have a gun, it should be loaded. And I knew that my dad lived 25 miles out of town, and he had a lot of guns, and they were all loaded. And I made a decision that night that the only way to fix this big, huge mess was to end my life. And really, I fell asleep that night with just the first sense of peace I had felt in years. And about the time I drifted off, that 4-month-old baby started crying. And I thought, my God, how can I kill myself and let that baby grow up thinking I didn't even love him enough to live? And that baby saved my life that night, because I did not do that. And Thursday, I did not drink, and Friday, I did not drink, and I was going crazy. I guarantee you, going crazy. And I got this phone call from that crazy ex-husband of mine that I used to fight with all the time, that used to beat me up, and he asked me how I was doing. And the truth is, he stalked me for like 4 years after we were divorced. He would find out where I lived, and I would move. I mean, I was afraid of him. He was dangerous. And he called and he asked me how I was doing, and for some reason I got honest with him, and I said, I'm not doing good at all. I can't make it another day. And he was calling me because he was 2 years sober in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was calling to make amends. And that is who 12-stepped me and my sister into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. God uses the most unlikely people and circumstances to bring about the miracle of recovery. And he took us to our first meeting, you know, and I was still living, after I quit running away, you know, when you're 18 or, you know, run away, you're legal, I started moving back home. As much as I ran away, I moved back home. My mom literally moved out of her own house. So...
To obtain additional copies, receive a free catalog of AA and Al-Anon talks, or to find out about our tape and CD of the Month Club, call Encore Audio Archives at 1-800-878-1308, or visit our website at www.12steptapes.com.
So anyways, so my mom called that when this was Friday, and Saturday night she made her like monthly call to make sure we're alive, and she said, how you girls doing? I said, we're going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she just started crying. And we went to that meeting, and I can't tell you what they said. I remember it being really dark. It wasn't, come to find out, but it seemed really dark, and I don't even remember what they said, except for you don't ever have to drink again and we're going to show you how. And I sure didn't believe it. I sure didn't believe it, but it got me to the meeting the next night. And that Friday night that my ex-husband 12-stepped us into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, he asked if I was willing to pray. And I guarantee you I believed in God. I hated him. You know, my sister that had been brutally murdered, she loved Jesus. You know, she had a New Testament in her purse, and boy, if that's what he does to those who love him, you know, who needs any part of that? And it seemed to me there was plenty of proof that there was no loving God out there. But I was willing to get on my knees and pray, because I did not want to take a drink. I certainly didn't believe I was praying to anything in particular, but I was willing to get on my knees and say a prayer. And I just started going to meetings. My sister and I, they called us the Bobbsey twins. We were joined at the hip. You know, I don't know how people come to AA. That takes great courage. You know, we'd sometimes stand out the meeting and go, okay, should we go to the meeting or get our hair done? Or, you know, if I'd have been alone, I'm sure I'd have been getting my hair done, not coming to a meeting. And we'd talk each other. And we just did a ton of meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I ended up going to treatment, an outpatient treatment center, and the lady in the treatment center wouldn't let me out of aftercare till I had a sponsor. So I finally said, well, why don't you be my sponsor? And she's like, okay. That's what she had wanted. So, but she ended up moving a short time after that, transferring with her job to Portland, and she said I had to find a sponsor. So I came to her, I said, I found a sponsor. She's just like me. She has a little kid. And she's like, no, no, no.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
Leroy will be your sponsor. And I know you guys don't know Leroy, but you know him somewhere, because he was the steward at this at the West End group. He lived there. He was always at the kitchen table, and all he ever said was, what are you going to do about it? And I remember telling Sandy, I am not going to let Leroy be my sponsor. He's a horse's, yeah, you know, horse's ass, really, is what he was. And she goes, yeah, just like you. And Leroy was my sponsor for the next 4 years, and Leroy was very, very involved with service, and I wasn't even, I think, 4 months sober. I was GSR for my home group, and we would, if there was a function going on in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was there. If there was a conference, I was there. Area assemblies, you know, I went to the first 19 area assemblies that were, we have 2 a year, and I went to the first 19 from the point I was 4 months on, and I mean, very busy in Alcoholics Anonymous. Anonymous, and my life got better almost instantly. Well, when you quit spending $500 a day on that stuff, you know, the finances kind of clean up pretty quick, and I wasn't waking up every day sick and ashamed, you know, and I had a little hope, and my house was cleaning my house up, and my mom had come to visit, and oh, my mom was so excited, you know. We all, when we were little girls, we had to start playing the piano when we were 6. There were the 3 of us, and when we were 16, we got to make the decision on our own if we were going to play the piano. Way too cool to play the piano. Of course I'm not going to keep playing the piano. So, and all my mom ever wanted was good little girls who play the piano. So anyways, I get all about, and my life is great, and it's going clickety-clack right along. And about 3 years sober, I hit a wall. I'm telling you, a wall. My world got black. You know, and I'm sitting in meetings thinking, wow, I've been in AA for 3 years, and I feel like this. AA doesn't work. And drinking never came to my mind, but again, suicide did. Suicide doesn't happen to me when I'm drinking. Suicidal thoughts happen to me in between drinks, when I need a solution. And I was starting to think like that, and I was at this one, first of all, I belonged to a meeting, saved my life, I guarantee you, but you couldn't find a big book. I mean, you had to look for a big book if you wanted one. If the meeting would start and somebody would say, anybody got a topic, problem, or solution? And always somebody had a problem, and we all went around the circle and shared our experience with the problem. Never had a solution, but felt very good that we were unified on the problem. And this one day, this woman shows up. I'd never seen her before, and it gets to her, and she's like, where's the big book? And they pull it out from underneath the coffee table, dust it off, and she opens it up to something about spiritual solution that will solve all your problems. And I wow. I had a spiritual experience. I was kind of looking around to see if anybody else felt like I did, and they looked kind of mad, actually. But I was interested. You know, I was interested. And the next Sunday, that woman came back, and turns out she taught me an important lesson, said I need to be showing up at the same meetings over and over, because that newcomer who didn't have the guts to ask me to be her sponsor last week might have enough guts the next week. And that's what happened to me. The next week, I asked her if she would be my sponsor. And if she had not shown up at that meeting, I don't know what I would have done. And what happened is I found out that I had been in AA for 3 years and not done AA. I had no idea that the AA program was the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had been very busy in service, and I was on step 0 at 3 years sober. I had not worked a step. I had cleaned everything up out here and nothing here. And just being sober for that long had kept me pretty happy, and but eventually you have to treat the problem. And the problem was in here. And I showed up at that woman's house, and she told me what it was going to look like. She said, you'll be going to these meetings and this many meetings, and you'll be coming to my house for an hour every week, and we're going to open that big book, and we're going to read it word for word. When we come to a question, we're going to answer it. When we come to a step, we're going to work it just like it's laid out in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm here to tell you, those 12 steps transformed me from the inside out. They changed my life. They changed how I felt about myself. I remember she had just moved from out of town, and we're working the steps, and we get to that 4th step, and you know, nobody knows me. You know, I told you what happened to me, but I did not even touch on what I did to other people. And but I just made a decision at that 4th step that I was going to tell her everything. I was not leaving anything out, and if she didn't like me when it was done, too bad. And when I went to do that 5th step, when it was all over, she put her hands on my cheeks, and she just said, baby, that's the best you could do without God's help. but now you got God's help. And I remember that. And my experience with God was, man, when I got here, I wanted to believe. I was willing to believe. And I kept telling you, if you can convince me, I will believe. And I spent a lot of time arguing with you guys about God. And this guy showed up at our meeting one day, and I have not seen him since. And it got to this old guy, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Forklift Jim, and you got to give up to win. I'll pass." And it was another one of those, you look around the room to see if anybody felt that, because that statement, again, it changed my life. I quit fighting and I started listening. You know, I became available to some new ideas about this power greater than ourselves. And I remember my sponsor, when I showed up at her house, said, "Your life needs a miracle, and you'll find them in the pages of Alcoholics Anonymous." And as I worked my way through the steps and through that book, God happened to me. And just like you couldn't convince me there was a God, you couldn't today convince me there wasn't a God. And I started working those steps and making those amends. And I remember going to my father to make amends. And my sponsor already had me going and being the best daughter that I could be, not expecting him to be the good father. I mean, he beat me. He demeaned me. He was a drunk, you know, an alcoholic. But my sponsor had me showing up and spending an hour with my dad every Saturday, or every Saturday every month. And it was in the bar, because my dad was a chronic alcoholic, and he was in the bar. He even had his own bar stool. So I would go and I would sit at that bar with my dad for an hour and talk sports, weather, and news. I remember one time the bartender had got this new liqueur, you know, and he opened it up and he offered me some, and my dad said, "No, she don't drink. Just give her a taste." I'm like, yeah, I relate to that, all right. And so anyways, when I went to make my amends to my father, I showed up and explained the process, and he's like, "I don't want to hear that crap. I want you to sit down and watch a Kentucky Derby with me." And that's what I did. And that was my amends to my father. And this amazing thing happened through the process of the amends. I spent my whole life thinking that you had to tell me you were sorry, that you had to, the guys that raped me would have to make it right, everybody was going to have to tell me they were sorry to make it right for me. And what I found out through the process of the amends, that I just had to make it right with them. I just had to own my part. All those resentments went away. My part was just showing up and making amends for the part. And believe me, I had a part with my father. You know, I was not a good daughter. And when we got to that part in the book where it says, perhaps the people who harmed us were spiritually sick, and my sponsor told me that spiritually sick means cut off from God. That, like me, they're doing the best they could without God's help. And I found out with this new perspective of mine that my dad had like 11 fathers. Nobody ever stuck around long enough to teach my dad how to be a dad. And I started being able to look at things in a different way. And you know, when I decided that God was a big fat lie, same time I'd been praying for God to keep my family together, my mom was praying for the courage to leave a chronic drunk with 4 little kids. And God had to answer her prayer. And now when I pray things that I think are unselfish and I don't get it answered my way, I know that somebody else has a priority. And today I have a right here, right now kind of God. You know, we get to pick it, right? So I'm not picking a God who puts 9 people in the grocery line to teach me a lesson. Hello. I'm picking a God who, when life puts 9 people in front of me at the grocery line, he'll give me patience. Right here, right now. Whatever I need when I ask, right here, right now. And I take a look at that little baby that, check my time. I was thinking I couldn't go on forever, but who knows? I'm going to put this clock up here, and I'm going to leave it here like I have all my watches and stopwatches. So whoever wants this when it's over, I'm sure I'm going to forget it. Anyways, that little baby that they laid in my arms that I felt nothing for is an amazing young man. I thought he was going to be one of us. You know, I did the typical partying, but man, he is a freak of nature. He's nothing like us. As a matter of fact, really, you look at it, in high school, he's in the bleachers playing the pep band. I was under the bleachers, half dressed. Looks totally different. He was, when he was 21, he bought his first house. You know, I was still couch surfing. And one time he always had this sense of confidence that I never had without a drink. And he got along with everybody, and he played sports. We were from a little town, so everybody got to play no matter how good you were. And everybody knew, really, that Tanner sucks at sports. But everybody loves Tanner, you know. So when he got fouled and he's up there, he had 2 free throws, and everybody's like, oh, well, whatever. And he gets up there, and he shoots, and it goes in. I'm telling you, the crowd goes wild. He shoots the next one and misses, you know, and on the way home, I'm like, fabulous shot. And he goes, yeah, the first time I stopped, I paused, I prayed, and I took the shot. And he goes, then I was so excited I forgot to pray. And I'm like, wait, you what? You prayed before you shot the basket? And I was floored. Come to find out, you guys weren't just teaching me how to stay sober, how to live sober. You were teaching him. He was watching women come in and out of my house and sit at my kitchen table and get on our knees and pray. And you guys gave my son a life I could have never given him. You know, and he graduated from high school. He loves music. He took the flute because that's where all the girls are, you know. So in school, he played the flute and then the baritone sax, and he's self-taught on the guitar and on the piano. He's just this incredible, talented young man, and it looks like he's not going to need us. But I know if he does, he knows where to go. And 5 weeks ago, that little boy had a little boy. And to tell you the truth, I was kind of afraid that when they put that little baby in my arms, I would feel nothing. But I knew what they were talking about when they put that little grandbaby in my arms. I thought I would burst. I thought I would burst. You know, I was married and divorced in Alcoholics Anonymous. That happens all the time too, I know. Actually, my friend John over there, your speaker yesterday morning, accused me of being a carrier, because after me, everybody started getting divorced. And anyways, first of all, it was an awesome, passionate marriage, both in AA, almost Mr. and Mrs. AA, you know, that's what it looked like. That's almost what I felt like I had to live up to. And it was good for a really long time until we get our dreams, which a lot of times pulls us out of the program. And he got his dream, and he quit coming to AA. And with 14 years of sobriety, alcoholism raised its ugly head in my home. And I know there are a lot of women who could live with that, but I could not. I started talking to myself in the mirror and trying to pretend what was going on was not. And I started losing my emotional sobriety, and I knew my physical sobriety was not far behind, and I left him. And we had started a business. They gave us a loan for $500,000. Bad idea. Always, well, not always, but always with me. Anyways, you know, I remember when they wrote us that check and we started building this business, and I just remember laughing. I can't believe they did it. And in the end, when he quit working at me and I was somehow going to have to come up with $500,000, not so funny, you know. Anyways, that divorce was another very dark place for me. You know, I get these ideas of how things are supposed to look. of how things are supposed to turn out. And when they don't, I don't know what to do with it. And I found out during that period of time, first of all, I've always told everybody in AA, when God closes one door, he opens another one. Don't you worry. But now I found out that God has hallways. Sometimes we're stuck between doors for a little while. And those are the times when my faith have to get deeper. And I remember calling my sponsor in tears, scared to death, and she said, I don't know what's going to happen, honey. But I know when you come to the edge and there's only darkness, God is either going to give you wings to fly or he's going to give you something solid to stand on. And it gave me just enough faith to keep on going. And we ended up selling that whole thing and ended up with a zero balance. God took care of it all like a month before they were going to file for bankruptcy or foreclose. It's amazing. I mean, I look back, I don't know why I doubt God, because I look back over the last 27 years and I have no reason whatsoever to doubt God. None whatsoever. My dad and I, of course, we had that hate-love relationship. I hated that I loved my dad, really, when I was drinking. I wish I did not care what he thought of me. But I made my amends to my father, and when my father got ill, he came to my home, and I took care of my dad, and he died in my home under my care. I remember telling him he had to go to the hospital, and he would not go because the last time he went, they had sent him to a nursing home, and he had to get his drunk buddies to park his car down the block so he could escape. And he would not go. He goes, I am not going. They will keep me. I said, Dad, if you don't want to stay, they're not going to keep you. And when they told my dad that if he didn't go to that if they didn't admit him, he had about 2 or 3 weeks to live, and my dad said, I want to go home, and I said, let's go. And I got to tell you, kneeling beside my dad's bed, I have never and probably never will again feel that sense of humility. Standing beside my dad's bed, praying at my dad's bed, and him dying in my home. There was no anger. There was nothing but love and compassion for my father. I knew that he'd done the best he could without God's help. And not long after that, my mother asked me if I would be the executor of her estate when she died. And I have a big brother, and she likes him best. You know how that goes. And I'm like, well, what about Lyle? And she goes, what I know, Terry, is that what I have written down here, you will follow through no matter how you feel. Because she had watched what I'd done with my dad, and I guarantee you I did not want to take my dad home to die, but I respected his wishes. I remember when my son got a tattoo when he moved out of my house, and I have tattoos, but that's different, you know. But he called me up. I was sitting across from my sponsor having coffee at the restaurant. He called me up. Hi, Mom, what are you doing? I said, I'm having coffee with Donna. And he goes, I said, what are you doing? He goes, I think I'm going to go get a tattoo. I'm like, right on. You know, he's 18. He goes, wow, really? Right on, huh? I said, yeah. And I'm making faces at my sponsor. And he goes, really? Well, you want to go with me? I'm like, of course. So I met him down there, and I took pictures while he got his tattoo, and we went and had pizza after that, and he's like, man, Mom, I gotta admit, I'm a little surprised by your reaction. And I said, honey, you are a man. This is your life, and you get to do whatever you want with it, and I will respect the choices you make. And I will tell you, I learned that from you in Alcoholics Anonymous. I respect people's dignity to make their own choices, whether I agree with them or not. And it is a freedom. There is freedom in allowing other people to behave and believe whatever they want. And my job, when I got sober, my personnel file, of course, was very thick. And little by little by little, it's worked down to awards and things that I've been able to do in my job. And like I said, I'll retire at the end of May. And when I turned 50 and got divorced, oh yeah, I was telling you a story a little while back. Anyways, I got divorced. I'm 50 years old. I'm living in my sister's basement. It didn't turn out that way. You know, we rented the place together. Then she bought it. And I felt like I was living in my sister's basement. I turned 50 and I'm like, wow, I kind of realized, you know, life is something that's happening right now. If there's something I want to do, I should be doing it right now. So I went and I bought myself this cute little house, and I started taking piano lessons. Man, I'm wishing I hadn't given that up at 16. It's definitely starting over at 50. So anyways, last Tuesday I turned 55. And that man who I met at Grandma's drunk and broke up with me, drunk at the Squire, asked me to marry him. 34 years later. I mean, God gives us do-overs in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I'm sober, and he's real happy about that. Last year I had my first piano recital. And my 78-year-old mother was in the audience, and she finally got her little girl who plays a piano. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me so much more than I could have ever dreamed up on my own. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I wasn't hoping and I wasn't dreaming. It just hurt to do that kind of stuff. And what I know in Alcoholics Anonymous is we can't hope or dream big enough. Crystal, take a seat, sit down all the way and stick around. You will love what you get. And Cliff, 60 years. Oh my gosh. Was it 60 or 61? Yeah, it is. Sobriety is amazing. You know, I was about a couple things, and I'm going to close up because I know people have to go places. It's Easter. You know, every Easter since I got sober, I've gone to early morning services with my mother. I'm not a regular churchgoer. I'm a seasonal churchgoer, you know, Christmas season, Easter season. Anyways, for all these years, I've gone to sunrise services with my mother, and I'm not there today. And she would rather have me here with you than they're doing that with her. And so I was about I guess I was about 16 years sober Thanksgiving. You know, my family laughs about it all. My family has been healed. When I took that drink, it changed my whole family's life. And when I walked in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, it changed my whole family's life. And my family is healed. And my mother laughs about this stuff just as much as we do. And I was about 16 years sober, and we're just talking and laughing. And she was laughing, and she says, the only thing I knew about you, Terry, when you left, you were gone. And she's laughing. And I mean, I felt like stabbed in the heart, because I got it at 16 years sober, what the real thing I had done for my mother, the exact nature of the wrongs that I had done with my mother. It wasn't stealing the money, it wasn't all that kind of stuff. I had stolen my mother's sense of security. For 14 years, she did not lay her head on the pillow in peace. I stole her ability to have a relationship with my siblings. I was such a huge problem. I sucked all the attention out of that home onto myself. Those are the things that I do as a practicing alcoholic. And today I get to give back. My mother's beck and call girl. She needs something, I am there. I do whatever I can, and she is so proud of me. You know, at 18 years sober, she quit saying, "Is it time for your meeting?" I know, it seems funny, but you know what the truth is? Maybe for 18 years she was still a little afraid that I might drink again. But she's free from that now too. As long as I do what I need to do. I love what Don, last night's speaker, was saying. I'm 27 years sober, and that 27 years sober won't do anything for me today. I have to do what I did yesterday to stay sober today. I woke up this morning with untreated alcoholism. I had to roll out of bed onto my knees and say a prayer. I needed to read some stuff out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had to do meditation. That's just so I can get to the coffee. You know what I mean? Yeah. I sponsor a lot of women because I don't ever want to forget what it was like, and I feel like if I'm not sponsoring newcomers, I might forget what it was like to be there. And I hope I never get too sober to think I don't need to do service work. I do not step aside for the newcomer. I take her hand and drag her along. I'm as active in Alcoholics Anonymous as I've ever been in my life, and I go into the prisons and the pre-release centers, and it has been a huge gift. I have never brought you more than I have taken away with, not ever. Not ever. I have this fabulous life. Here I am, 55 years old, retiring, getting married. What next, you know? I don't even try and figure it out because I know I can't. I just show up for it today, and I don't even wait for the next shoe to drop. I do not. You know, this morning I got up and opened my meditation book, and it said, "Do not be afraid. Hear me say, peace. Be still your restless heart. My love is not connected to your performance." I mean, God just speaks to me perfectly. There is no doubt in my life. I look back and I see who God has used to get me sober, the things I had to go through to get sober, the price I had to pay, the demands my alcoholism made on me, the place I was when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and where I live my life today. That is nothing but a miracle. I am sober today by the grace of God. And when I used to hear that, I used to think, I hated that actually, like, because some people didn't get sober. Like, I get the grace of God, but they don't. But what I found out today is that everybody that walks in the door gets the ability to experience the grace of God. I know today that my sponsor doesn't keep me sober. Those 12 steps don't keep me sober. The meetings I go to do not keep me sober. The service work I do does not keep me sober. Those things create the environment where I can access the power of God who keeps me sober. I cannot do without any of them. I must have them all in my life to access the power of God. And I have no exit strategy, really. Here I'm trying to... I know I said I was quitting the last story, but I guess I just want you to know, or I want you to see, especially if you're new, what God did with a woman like me, what he's done with the people in this room. If you're new, it's here for you. We are here for you. 27 years ago, I got on my knees and I prayed just in case, and I've not had a drink since. That's powerful stuff. May you find that power. Thank you. We're going to be together. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. To obtain additional copies, receive a free catalog of AA and Al-Anon talks, or to find out about our tape and CD of the Month Club, call Encore Audio Archives at 1-800-878-1308 or visit our website at www.12steptapes.com.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.